Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 4 Minutes from Midnight Virtual Band Project's Score Study video series. I'm Yoshio Yamashita. I am the director for the virtual band, and I'm also the composer of the symphony 4 Minutes from Midnight. This video is going to focus on a brief analysis of the low reeds for the symphony, which include, as you can see on the left here, first and second bassoon, also doubling contrabassoon at some points, the bass clarinet, and the bari sax. Tenor sax is included in the video that is aptly named saxes and is not included in this video. Let's begin by looking at rehearsal letter A in part 1. If you've listened to the piece before, you might notice that rehearsal A is just really general chaos, and that's quite intentional. The woodwinds are fairly atonal, meaning there's no harmonic relationship to what they're playing and, for example, what you're playing. What you're playing here is the Dies Irae plain chant, which I discuss at great length in score study video number 3, which is a video that explores some of the principal themes of the symphony. This low D forte with accents, I'm going to be talking mostly in concert pitch. This low D in the bassoons, which is a B in the bari sax, and an E in bass clarinet. Differentiate that from the fortissimo, and then again differentiate the fortissimo 3 bars before letter B. The Dies Irae plain chant begins here at letter A. This accented note is not part of it. Continues here 3 bars before B. Continues through B. This drawn out crescendo is not part of the plain chant, and then the plain chant finishes up here leading into letter D. If you are interested, and I believe I've notated it on the condensed score, this chord right before letter C is actually a B diminished 11 chord. Not that that's of any particular significance or that I actually realized that I did that, but that is what chord it is. It's very crunchy, and it's got all kinds of other harmonies on top of it as well. So just realize that your note may not sound like it fits in, but that's on purpose. At letter D, the bass clarinet serves as the bass voice in a 4-part chorale with the other 3 clarinet parts. So that's why the rest of the low reeds aren't playing there. Bass clarinet, that's just very legato, very espressivo, legato, dolce, singing, and rather plaintive as well. Make sure you're counting here from D to E. There's a 5/4 bar, 2/4 bar. More importantly, the pulse changes from quarter notes to half notes here at letter E. So make sure you observe that. Letter F, there is going to be no count in. Remember, there's a tempo change from half equals 83 to quarter equals 62. There is no mathematical relationship between the two tempos. I do try to help you out a little bit on the conductor video. I believe I'm subdividing eighth notes there at letter F. However, one of the best ways for you to get ready for that and be prepared for that is to listen to the conductor video as well as watch the conductor video in order to get yourself acquainted with that tempo change. And that entrance happens in bassoon 1 and the bass clarinet. Bassoons here, second bassoon, very legato connected. First bassoon, slightly staccato, but not too short. Here at letter G, everybody at some point will have a quintuplet or a fivelet. And what you need to be mindful of here is one of the biggest mistakes that happens with odd numbered tuplets, be they 5s, 7s, 9s, I guess even 11s and 13s, if we're going to be pedantic about it, is that people rush through them because they don't subdivide them correctly. We're really good about subdividing eighth notes and 16th notes and even triplets and sextuplets or sixlets. But we don't subdivide 5s, 7s, and 9s very well because we don't have something easy like 1 and a 2 and a that gets taught to us in how to subdivide them. So the easy solution to all of these problems is just find a 5-syllable word or a 7-syllable word or phrase, or a 9-syllable word or phrase. For 7s and 9s, it's probably easier to find a phrase than a single word. For 5s, some suggestions I've heard are the words university and geophysical. And so you simply subdivide university, 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 and then you've got 5s. So just practice slowly with a metronome, subdivide, and you'll be good. First bassoon, if you'll look here at measure 61, if we reference the full score, if I can get to it, you'll notice that the underlying pulse in the second oboe, second flute, first alto sax, and second alto sax is that same 5-lit pulse. So that will not line up with the triplets or the 8th note based rhythms that you have in that melody. So please be mindful of that. First bassoon, this fanfare figure you have with the oboes and the first clarinet, as you can see on this full score right here, that I'm not doing a very good job drawing a box around with my mouse. Through letter H, please make sure you count your rest. There is a meter change every measure between H and I, so mark them. One of the suggestions I have is to write 3 above 3, 4, 4 above 4, 4, so on and so forth. So you've got a very clear indication of how many beats are in a measure, or find whatever works for you. Letter I and J are still rest. K, that same idea from earlier, first and second bassoon. First bassoon not too short. Second bassoon very legato and connected, but still separate notes. Second bassoon, move to contrabassoon if possible at letter L. Bass clarinet joins the bassoon, playing the same notes, just transposed differently. This particular theme at letter L is covered extensively in score study video number 4, the theme's part 2 video. So if you're interested in exploring how I manipulate that through the movement and how that works, please reference that video. At letter M, note that there's no crescendo in the preceding measure. That is on purpose. This is an orchestrated crescendo in which we're adding more instruments to the ensemble and getting a greater density of sound leading into letter M. So there is a crescendo, but we don't have to write a crescendo in every single part. At letter M, bass clarinet, if you have an instrument that can play that low, please do. If you don't, take it up the octave as written. If no contrabassoon, second bassoon, play those notes as written. Letter N is a gorgeous horn chorale. However, we're talking about the low reeds, so we're going to skip that. Letter O is a recap of what happens at letter L and also what happens at letter N, but that's the horn chorale. Except it's transposed to concert C minor, concert E flat major. Bass clarinet, that's concert D minor, F major. Bari sax, that's concert A minor, C major for you. And then letter P is kind of the grand finale of the second movement, in which we present that theme that has been coming back again and again and again in the second movement, again, that we talk about in score study number 4 pretty extensively. But now it's in concert A minor, going to concert C major, which for bass clarinet would be concert B minor, D major, and bari sax, concert F sharp minor, A major. Then again, we have a whole bunch of rests leading into R. Bass clarinet, you have this accompaniment figure with the rest of the clarinet section. What you're doing there is you're imitating a harp or piano with pedal or vibraphone with pedal. What you're actually playing with is the vibraphone with pedal right there. However, you can think of it as a harp-like figure or a piano accompaniment type figure, whatever your best enables you to kind of orally visualize what's happening there. Everything here between R and S is an accompaniment figure. There's a very long and beautiful flute solo happening there. So anything in between R and S, be mindful that there is a solo going on and you're just background, even with, you know, beautiful passages like this bassoon kind of interlude here, which is not a melody. At letter S here, note that it's a descending bass line, which is just something really neat. And then bassoon 1, you're alternating downbeats with the clarinet 2, 3 that have upbeats. So let's look at that real quickly in the full score. So what's happening there is first bassoon and trombones have downbeats on beats 2, 3, and 4. And clarinet 3, alto 2, and tenor sax have every upbeat. So you're creating this kind of motor that goes through the melodic material at letter S. The polka retard is an augmentation of the pickup notes. So instead of 3, 4, 1, it's 1, 3, 1, which you'll hear if you go and listen to the full symphony or just part 1 in the condensed score video. Bassoon 1, you're doubling the oboes an octave lower, or in the case of oboe 1, 2 octaves lower at the odd tempo. Make sure you're counting those tied figures accurately. And then second bassoon, bass clarinet, and bari sax, make sure you're observing those dynamics appropriately. Second bassoon, especially if you're playing contrabassoon, make sure you bring this figure out at letter T as I discuss in score study video number 3, themes part 1. This is the final recurrence of the dies irae motif, the E flat, D, E flat, C, that keeps coming back throughout the symphony. That's the final occurrence in part 1. So just make sure that, you know, the audience can tell that that's going on underneath the melodic line. And then bass clarinet, although this is marked pianissimo, that doesn't mean that you need to be making zero noise. You know, we still want to hear a bass clarinet note there. It just needs to be very quiet. And that's the end of the analysis for part 1 of the symphony for low reeds. If you're planning on watching this video in 2 parts, you can go ahead and pause here and then pick back up whenever you're ready to continue. If not, I'm going to move on to part 2. Part 2 opens with the allegro molto and this descending scale. Bassoons, I forgot to put the slur on here, or it just kind of slipped by during the editing process. It should be slurred like it is here in the bass clarinet and bari sax. A note regarding that should have gone out in last week's weekly update email. If you didn't catch it there, please note it now. Remember to crescendo, even though this is moving downward, and our inclination as musicians is generally to decrescendo as things move downward, and crescendo as melodic lines or scales go up, because that's how our instruments naturally want to project sound. However, subvert your intuition and crescendo the downward scale. This molto agitato, you're going to feel like you're playing a wrong note maybe the first couple of times. This low C or D or A, depending on which instrument you're playing, is the root of a chord that is a B flat minor over a C pedal. So let's look very carefully at the condensed score since it's a little bit easier to see. If you look down here at the lowest staff where all the low reeds and trombones are notated, you'll notice there's a C down here. But then there's a B flat minor chord, which is spelled B flat F, B flat D flat, or if you put it in root position, B flat, D flat, F. Notice when you put a C underneath the B flat minor chord, you have a C in the bass, and then you have B flat, D flat, F. If you've ever gone up to a piano and pressed C and D flat at the same time, it doesn't sound particularly pretty unless you like minor seconds. And that's exactly the effect that we're going for here. We're going for a chord that's really very crunchy and very dissonant. And so you will feel kind of like you're playing a wrong note the first couple of times. However, that is not a wrong note. That is very purposeful. First, bassoon and bass clarinet attack the sforzando. Do not decrescendo this figure, and it is a subito mezzo forte at the 4/4 bar. And then bassoons and bass clarinet just really attack this figure. It should be an abrupt cutoff, and then there will be this really loud timpani roll that decrescendos to nothing at letter B. There's going to be a piccolo solo that starts in this 3/4 bar at bar 14. First clarinet and oboe join in at bar 17. And then bassoons, you're playing with the horns at the 6/4 bar. I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of playing the actual score for you during these analysis videos in order to keep the time shorter. However, if you're interested in listening to these moments in greater detail, I highly suggest you star them on your part or write down the measure numbers and then go visit the condensed score video on this YouTube channel in order to look at those in greater detail on your own. First bassoon, this is a moment I talk about in score study video number 3, in which we see the chorale theme that gets used at the end of the symphony. We see that used as a motif here right before C. Letter C is essentially a recap of what happens at letter B. It's the same melodic material, the mixed meter chorale, the 3/4/6 chorale that we see at letter B and we'll see again at letter F and beyond, except it is transposed from concert D minor into concert E flat minor. For those of you in concert pitch, please mind your G flats and your C flats. Bass clarinet, mind your A flat, D flat, and bari sax, mind your E flat and A flat. At the end of letter D, first bassoon and bari sax, that is a true a true double piano. That is not a piano. That is a pianissimo. As well as bass clarinet, that is a pianissimo right there. Not kind of a piano pianissimo, but a true pianissimo. And then you're going to crescendo up to mezzo forte. As you can see, we've got that descending bass line again, which is a good hint. We are reprising the theme that showed up at letter S in part 1, except it's in a different key. It's in concert F minor instead of concert C minor. Bass clarinet, you've got a very special little descant line that I believe you're doubling the euphoniums with. Let's take a quick look right here. You're doubling the first horn and the euphoniums there. So listen for those while you're playing along with the click track video. I know there's no real ensemble for us to play with, which is very sad, but we will simply have to wait on that. Letter F is a recap of the chorale, except it's in the low brass and, of course, in the low reeds here. Contrabassoon, if possible, bassoon 2. Otherwise, play as written. Again, if you want to hear me talk a little more about this particular theme, go back and reference score study video number 4, which is the themes part 2 video. Bassoon 1, you're playing in a woodwind choir with the rest of the high woodwinds. You're the bass part of that chorale. As you can see, you're playing with both of the oboes, eventually both flutes and piccolo, and then all of the clarinets and plus bass clarinet near the end. Bar before G, you will hear a piccolo solo. On the downbeat of G, you'll hear a timpani stroke. And then if you watch the conductor video, I will cue in this 4/4 bar. This is the chorale theme that shows up as the grand finale of the symphony at the very end. And then at letter H, this is a copy and paste of the sequence that begins part 2. So I'm going to skip over it. At letter K, second bassoon, if you do not have a contrabassoon, do not play until the passage at letter L, or more specifically in the 5th bar after letter L. Bass clarinet, I misspelled the word crescendo, but this should say non-crescendo, not whatever that word is. So again, subvert your musical intuition to crescendo as the line goes upward, and just keep a solid piano dynamic there. But do crescendo this next passage. All low reeds observe mezzo forte crescendo into forte. I know it's difficult to see right here. And then forte piano going to forte or fortissimo. Second bassoon, this fortissimo on the low C is more intended if you have a contrabassoon. So maybe back off closer to a forte if you're only playing on a normal bassoon. Again, this is forte, or if, in the case of the contrabassoon, if you're playing the contrabassoon, fortissimo, all the way through letter N. The crescendo, go up and then come back down a little bit. Obviously, if we crescendo from fortissimo to fortissimo or something like that, you risk overwhelming your microphone and creating a whole bunch of static, which isn't musical and is hard to edit down. And you could also drown out the ensemble in the final recording, which is also a little bit difficult to edit. With these descending chromatic runs, note that they generally decrescendo from piano or pianissimo downward. Just because it's a decrescendo doesn't mean we want you to decrescendo to absolutely nothing where we can't hear you. Notes at the end should still be articulated, and we should still be able to tell what notes they are. For example, that a low D flat. We just want those notes to be very quiet. Second bassoon, if you have a contrabassoon, bring this out a little more, so maybe closer to a piano mezzo piano instead of a piano. If you don't have a contrabassoon, again, simply play as written. Bass clarinet, I believe there's only one of you, so you can ignore the one only marking here. This was in the case that we had more than one bass clarinet, which I don't believe we have. Letter O is another beautiful horn chorale. Letter P is a very nice brass chorale. And then letter Q is kind of the grand finale of everything. Bass clarinet, make sure to bring out this measure, bar 165. And then everyone else, just a nice full forte. You are the foundation of everything that's going on there. So making sure that we have that foundation is critically important to this section being played effectively. Bass clarinet, again, what I was talking about with the clarinets earlier in an earlier video, subdivide these runs and practice very slowly with the metronome at first if you need to, and then move them up to tempo, just like I was talking about with the fivelets earlier in part 1. Observe the 2/4 measure, and then this is a very short coda leading to a C major chord, or in the bass clarinet's case, D major, or Barry Sax's case, A major, leading to the fortissimo final chord. And yes, that should be a true fortissimo, not just fortissimo, 3 Fs. Also note the legato marking over the final 8th note. This last 8th note should be held out for its full value. It is not a stinger on the end of a Sousa march. This is a long 8th note. And that concludes the analysis of the low reed parts for the symphony. I hope this video has been helpful in preparing your interpretations of your parts for the symphony recordings. If you have questions or comments about this analysis, you can email us at 4minutesvirtual@gmail.com. If there are moments that you would like to see another score study video on, or you'd like to see us go into more depth in a future score study video in particular moments, let us know. Email us at 4minutesvirtual@gmail.com. And thanks for watching.